Hello, I am Jennifer Lynn Purcell, aka Ever-Tuning Butterfly, bringing to you Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD. I don't know if you're a new listener or not, but I would like to share with you where I get most of my articles for this podcast. I've recently learned about a nonprofit that I would really like to help. It's the NVLD project. In addition to doing research on NVLD and working to get it back on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that is the DSM, they provide support groups for those with NVLD. You can find the NVLD project at www.nvld.org. All proceeds from this podcast and the ads will go towards the NVLD project. I will include the link for this in the description of the podcast. Please go to livingwithnld.com to learn more about my podcast. Also, I would like to announce that I now have created a YouTube channel for this podcast. I will post the link for this in the description for you. So I would like to thank everybody who donated to my fundraiser for the NVLD project. Today is the last day to donate to it, so you still have time if you want to donate to it. The amount that we are at now is $1,166. Wow, that's a lot of money. And I have been telling the NVLD project about the success of the fundraiser, and they are very happy about that, and they are very grateful about it too, and appreciative. So thank you to everybody who donated to it, and I think we made a big difference for mental health this month, and also for sexual abuse, even though it was for the NVLD project, which doesn't really focus on sexual abuse. It was also sexual abuse awareness this month, so I was focusing on both of those because if you have listened to episode 20 of this podcast, you will know that I am a survivor of sexual abuse. And that is definitely something that has changed my life. So, yeah. And again, I really do appreciate all the support that I got with this fundraiser. I did not think I was going to go that much over the goal, but thank you again to everybody who donated to it. Hope you enjoyed the episode that's coming up. Also, I would like to announce that we are going to have the 6th small Zoom group, I should say, meeting on May 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific time zone. And if you want to come to this, please go to Facebook, not livingwithnld.com, but go to Facebook with Living with NLD page, and you should see underneath groups a small Zoom group for it, and you can ask to join that group, and you will be able to come to it. Or you can message me on Facebook. My name is Jennifer Purcell, and my middle name is Lynn, so you'll have to look for that as well. Or you can email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com about it, and I do respond to those emails quite frequently, so that will work too. And the meeting lasts about an hour and a half, so it goes until 11:30 Pacific time zone again. So if you have any issues converting it to your time zone, if you're in a different time zone, just let me know. I can help you figure that out. All right. Thank you. Bye. All right, so today's episode is about how COVID affects NVLDers, or people who have NVLD. So, the first article we are going to be using from the NVLD project is titled "The Effects of COVID for NVLD Students" by Eileen, who, quote, loves to tackle challenges, end quote. Quote, first is needing to wear a mask to be safe is challenging, as many experience fine motor and communication difficulties. In the beginning, I experienced my own struggles, so hearing the stories about how this requirement has brought extra challenges, such as having it on all day and difficulty being understood, makes total sense to me. Yes, others facing difficulties wearing a mask too, but for this population, the struggle is real. And for the more severe population who may not understand, it is even harder, end quote. So I can relate to what Elaine said about masks and challenges, because it's harder for me to read facial expressions with half of the face covered. Since the mouth is covered with the mask, I have to rely on the eyes and eyebrows to read their facial expression. And this makes it difficult because you may guess the wrong expression based on only having half of the face to look at or reference. Also, tone of voice can be muffled when someone is talking with a mask on, so that makes it harder too. Because usually, tone of voice can help you identify someone's mood. Another issue that makes it hard for young people is that they need to work from home if they have a job that can be done remotely, which means they get to spend less time with their coworkers. They also have to limit their interaction with their friends and loved ones, so this compounds their loneliness. Unless you live with your parents, as I do, then you are less fortunate because you don't see them 24/7. That is if you live alone. Or if you live with some roommates. I feel like my social life is on hold, though, because I can only be with friends virtually until we get vaccinated, because my parents, especially my dad, are in a more vulnerable age group, so I want to keep them safe. I have been wearing 2 masks instead of 1 to protect them and myself, because I'm in the asymptomatic category. Employers have also used COVID as an excuse to fire or terminate employees with learning disabilities, or LDs, since it usually costs more money, time, and energy to train them and to help them out when they run into challenges. In the article, 1 million people with disabilities have lost jobs during the pandemic. Alan Smith, JD, says that 1 in 5 people with disabilities has lost jobs since last March, compared to 1 in 7 of the general population. I think people with LDs are more vulnerable or at risk because of the pandemic, since employers can use that as an excuse to fire, let go, or to terminate them, even though they may never have gotten COVID-19. The employer would probably be using it as an excuse to cut down on the time, money, and energy that it would take to help that employee that has autism or other learning disabilities or challenges to perform their job well. The employer would have to spend extra time, money, and energy to train that employee so they could do their job as close to the way a neurotypical person would. I've been fortunate to not be among the ones to lose their job, but that's because my employer understands NVLD and helps me with the challenges it presents. Also because our staff has already reduced during COVID and doesn't need to get any smaller. I would say the pros, that there are pros and cons to working at home when you have a learning disability or learning challenge, as I like to call it. The pros are the flexibility, safety from getting COVID-19, conveniency, and affordability. It would allow that individual to save stress on making ends meet with rent, food, technology, for example, or that is internet, Wi-Fi, TV, etc., utilities, health insurance, car insurance, taxes, or other bills. The main con would be that it would be harder to get hands-on help from their employer for certain tasks since they're working remotely. Another con would be that it would be more difficult to work on social issues, challenges with limited interaction with coworkers, because they would be using things like Zoom or FaceTime to talk to coworkers, and that can limit how you see social interactions with your coworkers. The second article from the NVLD project is titled Helpful Chronovirus Homeschooling Tips for Parents by Craig Sessler, who has an MSCCSLP, who is a, quote, licensed speech language therapist and learning specialist who experience includes an appearance on WIPX 11 News of New York. Of New York, discussing developmental apraxia of speech. And Sessler also has a podcast called Hope for Kids and Adults with ADHD, Craig Sessler of Themba Tutors, end quote. So this one addresses the difficulty parents are dealing with because schools are not being held in person anymore, although that recently changed. So when I wrote this script, they were not being held in person, so that's why I said that in the script. So now it's different, but when they weren't being held in person, these were the challenges. So, quote, before you begin homeschooling, talk to your parent or yourself to work out a schedule and keep your kids on it, exclamation point. If you're in a two-parent household, it's important to talk to your partner about how homeschooling will work, Selinger says. Does one parent need to work remotely with no distractions for a part of the day? Is one parent more flexible? Scheduling your days as a family needs to start with the caregiver or caregivers carving out time to work, teach, and do the dishes. If you're a single parent, have this conversation with yourself. When do you need to work, and when can you take time to help your kids learn? When can you take time for yourself? End quote. I can relate to this article because I was homeschooled in an online charter school before college. And we did it at my parents' workplace, so I know what it's like for them to have to juggle school and work. I had to learn how to block out all the noises in the work environment as well. This made it easier when I got to college because I could study in a noisy environment. It is also hard because daycares are closed, so mothers and fathers have to take care of their kids for longer than usual. Parents also will have to find tutors because they most likely won't know how to help their kids with homework unless they are teachers. Even if they are teachers, they might need help because they might have learned differently when they were in school or how their kids' teachers are teaching them. Meaning that their kids' teachers might teach them differently than they're teaching their students in school. I had tutors in middle school and high school because it got to the point where my parents couldn't help me anymore since I was learning things in new ways or things they had never learned in school. Thankfully, my mom, being a minister, had a good-sized congregation that were teachers or had been teachers that could help me out with various subjects. And so I would like to give a little bit more context with the homeschooling. What I found challenging with that, because I didn't know about the NLD then, it was, a little tricky with how am I going to learn well, because I didn't know about my learning challenge then. And I've talked to some of my tutors about this now that I know I have NLD, or now that I've known for it for a while. And some of them did think I had a learning challenge because they were like, well, one day you got what I was saying to you and the next day you forgot all of that I taught you the previous day. So I had to go back over it. That's what Jeff Weiser said to me in the interview I did with him. That does make sense to me because that was with math, and I did not like math. I still don't like it, but I can tolerate it because I've gotten better at it because of him and my other math tutors. So, and that's also probably true of other subjects that weren't my favorite, like science when it had math in it. So I'm glad I had tutors that were very patient with me and were willing to go back over things that they had already taught me. And they were like, oh my goodness, I had already taught her this. Why is she not getting it? That's probably what was going through their head. So I think I was lucky and fortunate. So whether it's trying to read facial expressions while someone is wearing a mask, working from home, or homeschooling kids, and others who have NLD experience difficulties in all of these areas. Or if you're trying to be a parent and you have a kid who has a learning challenge like NLD, you have those issues also. So I can be empathetic with you as well. So as I wrap up today, I would like to share a few things with you. And I would like to hear from you and know what is the most difficult thing you encounter or you have encountered during COVID. It could be about schooling or about something else. If you are listening on Spotify or somewhere else, please shoot me an email at livingwithnld@gmail.com. If you're listening on livingwithnld.com, please leave a comment below the episode. Thank you for listening today, and I will talk to you next Friday. Bye. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also, see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.